So much for our introduction. And now we come to experiment number one, which has, I suppose, two titles. One would be the pointing finger, and the other one, I suggest, the country less visited, the country rarely visited. In fact, this is a journey as much as it is an experiment. And a real journey, I mean a real journey. And it is to a place which I think it is extremely important and fascinating to visit. And we three are going to enjoy a visit to this country and to give you, I think, the feel and the impression of how it's done, how the journey is made, and then I shall go on and share it with you more intimately, so that you and I are involved in that journey very deeply. This is a country, a journey to the country less visited. But I think when we were very, very little, when we were infants, you know, tiny babies, we were at home in that country. And it was our native land, and it was a very big country. You know, when we were very little, I think we were really very, very big. We were very little for others and very, very big for ourselves. And when we were little babies, we didn't have any boundaries. We didn't stop somewhere and then our environment began. We were the whole scene without any boundaries. No doubt for the infant, our world was a great big booming confusion, but we had no boundaries. And then when we got a bit older, we left that country and we began to look at ourselves from outside. And you know, it's called growing up, but in fact it's shrinking, you see, because what we do when we become children and then teenagers and adults is to move out and see ourselves through others' eyes in imagination as objects. And those objects are pretty small. And so we become eccentric, out on a limb, and alienated from ourselves. We are strangers to ourselves. Camping, setting up a camp as displaced persons outside our residence and wondering what it's like inside. In fact, reading books about what it might be like in our own home, which is rather crazy, isn't it? So we're going home, you see, we're going home. And it's a real journey in which we're all going to share. And I think at this time, the song, pop song, which was around, I don't know if this is a very good one, and I don't even remember the title, but I do remember some of the words. And the singer, a lady, was singing something about having gone to, she'd traveled the world, she'd been to Timbuktu and Sydney and Tokyo and Moscow, and you name it, she'd been there. And alas, she said in the song, I have never been to me. I have never been to me. Well, we're going to make the journey now. And it's rather an important journey. I think it's a journey to the place we were at when we were very little babies. And I think it's a place which every creature is living from and looking out of in its experience, his or her experience. It's where we're all living from, what we're looking out of, and only man, only this crazy, absurd, ridiculous species of ours has gone out and become a displaced person out there looking in at what it looks like to others. So, as I said in the introduction, the great con is, I think I said it, the great con is I am what I look like. You see, in other words, I am the outside view of myself and not the inside view. There's a saying attributed to Jesus. I hope he said it, and if he didn't, I think he ought to have done. And it's this, that a man who looks upon himself only from outside makes himself small. Well, I think we got shrunk in the wash, didn't we? We grew up, we grew down. And now I think we really will come home to surely the place we never left. Because the journey out there was a notional one, it wasn't a real one. And we're coming back to the place we never left. And it is a country less visited, hardly ever visited when we grow up. I think it's more unknown than the moons around Venus and, the furthest galaxies. We all really, lots of information about those far places. But this is a place, it's almost forbidden for adults, for intelligent, grown-up, sophisticated, smart adults to visit. And I say that's tragic. And let's come home to the place which I think we shall find is our native land, which has a smell of home, the comfort of home, the pleasures of home, and it's a big country. I think we should find it's a big country. So I'm going to ask Sean and Maureen with me to do this little experiment, which is indeed a journey home. So would all three of us do this, and the viewer will see what we're up to, and then, as I say, the viewer and I will share what we've been finding, so that the viewer enjoys this experience, and we can then talk about it. And Maureen and Sean will be asking me, and I shall be asking them things about this, about the practicality of it and the objections. So that is my little introduction to experiment number 1. Are we ready? Good. Well, will you please do what I do? And I shan't monitor what you're doing. You have to do it for yourself, because I'm going to do it for myself, as if I've never done it before. Because it's always a new experience. So I'm not looking after you, I'm doing it for myself. And what I first of all do is point to the ceiling. So could we all point to the ceiling? And if the viewer likes to do it, I think it's better if the viewer looked at us, because then she or he would see what we're up to. We point at the ceiling and look now and see that it is an object, a coloured, opaque object called a finger, indicating a coloured and shaped object or series of objects, namely the lights and so forth, beams of the ceiling. So it's object, thing, space, thing. Now, could you bring your finger down a little, so you're pointing at the wall opposite you, just below the ceiling now, and you get the same thing, don't you? Your finger is pointing at something. And now, could you point? I'm going to point at Sean, and Sean, presumably, is still pointing at me. Now, I'm finding Sean's got on the top of his frame there, the Sean body has a kind of finial on it called the Sean face. It's got a meatball, a very nice, appetizing meatball there, and I'm pointing at his face. And he's got eyes and nose and mouth, the usual equipment there. Now I point at his chest. And still, it's a thing pointing at a thing. Coloured, opaque object pointing at a coloured, opaque object, namely a chest and a tummy. And I point to his legs now, and again, same story. Now we have to do something a little different. We have to point down at the floor. So point right down at the floor, and I'm pointing, I find, again, at an object. And so I've got a finger, which is a coloured, opaque object pointing at another one. Now I point to my lap, my knees, and there again we have a finger, space, thing. Thing, space, thing. I bring my finger round and point to my tummy. So it's finger, space, tummy. Finger's about 9 inches away from my tummy. And I point at my chest. And then it's the same story. It's a thing indicating a thing. And then I bring my finger up and I point to what I'm looking out of. And I don't know about you, but I can tell you that my finger is pointing at no thing. Is pointing at the big country, which one great writer called Thomas à Kempis called the country of everlasting clearness. See how big it is, how clear it is. But it's not a thing, is it? Surely it is space for everything that is given space for it to happen in. And we have come home, have we not, to the place we never left. Were we ever absent from this place? And look at the coloured, opaque finger there, that object. Is it not pointing at something which has no colour, no opacity, and no shape? All right, we can put our fingers down, we can put them to rest now. And I guess before we involve the viewer, perhaps you would just, I'd like to say what you found. Maureen, what did you find?
Absolutely clear space. It was like I was pointing into this huge, it was almost like I was pointing into the huge room, which was filled with things, but nothing in the way.
Nothing in the way.
Nothing in the way whatsoever.
So you're clear of all obstruction there.
Totally clear.
Wholly clear. And it has no boundaries?
No.
It's a big country, isn't it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Gosh, doesn't it go on forever and ever? Big country.
Mm-hmm. Currently
Maureen,
filled with these things.
In fact, do you think you never ever left that country? It was all illusion that you were out there camping out, looking at Maureen from 6 feet away.
Mm-hmm. Rather surprising.
But you know, isn't it extraordinary, Maureen, that we don't visit this country more often?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when I say this is absolutely clear here, people think I'm really a very funny chap, you know, very peculiar. Mm-hmm. I need psychiatric care or something. I mean, it's really extraordinary that we don't visit this place. Because it's what we're looking out of, where we're coming from, it's our native land. Surely it's nearer than all else. It's nearer to me in my hands, my feet, and my breathing. Come on, it's got to be important, hasn't it? Mm-hmm. And it's unenterprising and ridiculous not to visit there, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Besides which, the great ones say there is our healing. I mean, this is the treasure. And also, what about, you see, all those things we were pointing at, they're all perishing, aren't they? Because they're things. Everything perishes. Ceilings perish. Walls perish. My dear friend Sean, as Sean is certainly getting older every time I see him, and one day will there be no Sean around? Because it's perishable. And I come here. How can this perish? Nothing here to perish. So it's a matter of life and death to get it right. Besides being home, it's a safe place. The only safe place is the big country, isn't it? Sean, what did you find?
Well, Douglas, in a way, I pointed at something. There were many things to point at in that direction. And when I came to here, then I couldn't see anything. But Douglas, the fact that I can't see what's here and what I'm pointing at doesn't mean that it's not here.
Yes. Well, Sean,
I mean,
hold
surely, because I can't see my head,
Yes.
You know, does that, I mean...
Sean, put that one on hold.
Okay.
Put it on hold, because I'm going to just share it with the viewer before we discuss that, see. So keep it on hold. Don't let me off. Don't let me off that one. It's a tricky one, isn't it? Don't let me off. Well, now, our viewer here, I mean, I'm asking you now, if you would, just to look at what you see my finger now pointing at you, a very foreshortened finger with Douglas's face, at the end of the arm that's pointing the finger. Now, that finger, you can see, slightly trembly, is a coloured opaque object. Now, is it pointing at another coloured opaque object at this moment on present evidence? When you drop memory, drop imagination, and just have a look at what's receiving my finger now, what's taking it in, what do you find there? Are you something taking in the sight of this finger? In fact, how could you take in the vision of this pointing finger if you were a coloured opaque thing there? That would obscure the view. Are you not busted, wide open now, open space for this pointing finger? And the journeys you make all around, you could look all around the room, look at the ceiling now, if you like, and look at the ceiling and the walls and so on. You can see that those are things there. And you come round right to near yourself, and you come to a spot in the room, in your room there, which is a big country. In your little room there, you might be in quite a little room, but in that little room is the big country. And where will you find the big country? You will find it in the place my finger is pointing at. Isn't this marvellous and thrilling and extraordinary fact that we don't ever visit it, or very rarely visit it? And we are really frightened of this, strangely enough. But I say we have every reason to be frightened when we are out there, because everything there perishes. And only this that you're looking out of, only this that I'm looking out of, because it is aware no thing, only that will never perish. And while we're on this, looking now at what my finger's pointing out to you, looking out of that, looking from that, the sea, you can see, can you not? It has no boundaries. It goes on and on and on. In this direction, that direction, that direction, that direction. It has no boundaries. Isn't it? Big, huge country. And looking that away, it's empty, isn't it? And looking this away at Douglas now, why, it's full of the scene. So looking that way, it is space for the scene that is here. So it is boundless this way, it has no boundaries, and it is empty that way, and it is full this way, and above all, it's awake, it's awake, it's awake. And does your awakeness live anywhere but there? It doesn't live out in the room somewhere, or in the garden, or in the city. Where does your awareness reside? But in the clear country. So it is a country worth visiting, isn't it? It really is. Great to share it with you. Well, Sean, we come now to, will you repeat your...
Well, Douglas, I point here, but obviously I can't see when I point at it. I mean...
You're saying you can't see?
Yes. Well, I mean, I point here and I can see something, then I point here. Well, I can't see anything.
You can't see it, but other people can.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
surely I have a head here.
You're a Democrat. You say, well, I can't see, but everybody else can. Millions and millions of people say you have got a meatball there.
Exactly.
Why should you be the one?
Well, in this exercise, you pointed here and said there was a meatball.
Yes. A good question. Well, I don't know. Maybe you do have a meatball there. I don't know. I tell back myself that I can only see. I'm not in a position to tell people what it's like where they are. Because only you can say what it's like there. Only Maury can say what it's like there. And it's cheek and it's not on for me to tell you what you are like there. All I can do, honestly, is to tell you what I'm like here. And if you ask you whether you find yourself in the same condition, it is chauvinism and wrong and nonsense to tell people what they're like. That's why the appeal is always to the viewer, to the other one, because they are the authority on where they're coming from. You are the sole and final authority on where you are coming from, and you and I let everybody else tell us what it's like. So I can just tell you what it's like here, Sean, for you to check up on. And I can tell you that there is absolutely, it's not that I can't see my head here, I see my absence of head, which is different. I see my nothingness, I see my colourlessness here, I see my lack of opacity, and so on. Now, if you say, well, Douglas, that's maybe simply because you're in the wrong place to see it, I would say this, that this is entirely verifiable in the laboratory. This is scientifically copper-bottomed and ironclad. And I would invite you to come. If you don't believe there's nothing here, I would say come and see and visit me here. Make this journey here with your Polaroid or other instant camera. Now, to get a photograph of Douglas, where do you take the photograph from? A little further away, perhaps, you're a bit near, but I suppose with a modern camera you could get pretty well the whole of Douglas in from where you are, couldn't you?
Yes.
Right. Now, we're coming up. Yeah, I've invited you to come up, you see. Now, you're coming up with your Polaroid camera, and you come to here. And I guess that here you get his face, wouldn't you?
Yes.
In your camera.
Yeah.
Which, incidentally, is where I find it in the mirror. So, and you find it there. When you're there, Sean is there, and his camera there, and the mirror is there, all three are registering Douglas's face, aren't they? And the cat is, and the dog is. Come on, I mean, that's on show there. Right. Mm-hmm. Now you bring your Polaroid camera nearer, and why? Your photograph now might be of an eye, or nose, or mouth, chin, forehead. It's not Douglas anymore, is it? You're not even sure whose skin it is, are you? And then you come in nearer, and now you have to fit more sophisticated optical lenses, and then perhaps go to the laboratory and start using an electron microscope. And your story now is why, I did mention this briefly in the introduction, why your story now is of tissues, cells, which are little living creatures, not human, they're live. And you come in further, and you come to molecules which aren't alive, but they're kind of substantial. You come further into atoms, which are not even substantial, nearly all empty space. And you come further in, and the story is of particles, God knows where they are and what they are. And you've lost me. Before you get here, you've lost me. And so this is scientifically verifiable. I'm telling the truth, that there is no, I complete the story. Scientists can't quite get here. I complete the story, say no thing here. In principle, this applies not only to faces, it applies to everything else. I mean, this cup now. The cup is a cup for us because it's the right distance. But it's not a cup here. It's no longer a cup. Whatever you go up to, you lose. And you went up to, I would say about me, I went up to myself and I lost myself. Entirely lost. And I gained the world. I lost a decaying meatball, which was never here anyway, and I gained the whole wide world, thank you very much, and that's good trading and good business, isn't it? And so I say this is it. And it's not that you can't see your head, but you can see your absence of head and every other darn thing.
That's
Does
right.
that answer your question?
Well, it does, Doug. I mean, I see that the Douglas that I see right now, in my mind, I say that Douglas is sitting over there. That's not true. The Douglas that I now see is, in fact, I see from here.
Yeah, and we are trading
We're
faces.
trading, yes. And
I have
here,
your face.
there isn't any.
Yes, trading faces.
Quite empty of that.
And you see, this has great practical implications, doesn't it?
Douglas, a thought was coming up to me as you were doing this. So in order to see who I really am, I have to forget who I thought I was, who I've been told that I was from this other view. It's almost a certain kind of amnesia, because when you're asking me to look here and see what I see, there's a tendency, like I want to impose what I remember.
Yes. But you see, the joke is, Maureen, you can't remember having had a face there because you never did have one. It's not even a memory. It's all along been a fantasy. It's never been a straight memory.
It's a remembered fantasy.
You remember a fantasy, so it's a double nonsense,
right.
Isn't it?
Right.
You're remembering a fantasy.
It's a bit of a joke, isn't it?
A double nonsense. And of course we all know this. This is a country we lived in when we were very little. As small children, we are living from the big country. And animals and plants, I think, are doing the same, unquestioningly, not very consciously. And then it's the humans that have gone crazy, and it's taking up this position and saying, out there, saying, I am here, what I look like,